Hello, friends. My name is Charmaine, and here at To a Child, we talk about spirituality and mental health and how they work together. My biggest block to spirituality was the fact that I thought I had PTSD, when it actually turned out I had CPTSD, complex PTSD. And there's a difference between the two. And I know most people probably know this, but there are some that don't know exactly what each entails. So I'm going to give you the differences between PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder, and CPTSD, complex post traumatic stress disorder. So let me just run down the differences here. We'll do PTSD first. PTSD is connected to a single traumatic event or episode. It's a short lived trauma, visual and somatic flashbacks, nightmares and sleep issues, avoidance of triggers, isolation, disassociation, anxiety, and depression, paranoia and hypervigilance about surroundings, self-destructive behavior. CPTSD, complex PTSD, develops due to multiple traumatic events or episodes, long-term trauma, visual, somatic, and emotional flashbacks, night terrors, sleep paralysis, and insomnia, avoidance of triggers and relationships, chronic isolation, associated with dissociative disorders and personality disorders, distrustful of people and the world in general, difficulty in regulating emotions, disproportionate emotional responses, negative self-view, feeling of hopelessness, worthlessness, and guilt. Now, those are the differences. PTSD, sometimes short-term therapy can really help in the healing process there, but long-term usually takes a bit more of a commitment. For example, I have been working seriously, like with focus, on healing since 2013 when I landed myself in the mental ward at the VA hospital and realized that I did not belong there. And I then knew that they keep trying to tell me to do these things and I don't think they're going to work, but I should probably put some effort in and see if they actually don't work because I have to do something to change. And it was after I came out and really started focusing and put the time in for the practice of the skills that it takes in order to be able to use the skills when you are in the emotional situation. It sometimes seems so silly to practice mindfulness or meditation or whatever it is that you practice to calm yourself down, whether it's outward observation and you're naming colors, or you're doing the 5 senses, running through the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method. Whatever it might be that you use to calm yourself down, if you don't practice it when you aren't emotionally triggered, the chances are that when you are emotionally triggered, you'll remember the tool to calm yourself down. It's highly unlikely because our brains go into flight, fight. Our amygdala fires up. And when that fires up because of the PTSD or CPTSD, we have to actually turn on that thinking part of our brain. We have to be able to go, whoa, 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 whoa. Is that a fire I smell or is that a candle I blew out? And that can make a big difference between what you do, whether you're running out of the house for your life or you're calm and everything's fine because it's just a little smoke from a candle. In here, there is a description, visual and somatic flashes versus visual, somatic, and emotional flashbacks. Most people don't know what a somatic flashback is. I didn't know what a somatic flashback was when I first entered therapy. I understand the concept of flashbacks, but somatic, what does that mean? Somatic flashbacks occur when the sensory aspects of the trauma appear without conscious awareness of the memory. In patients with complex PTSD, their ability to disassociate from the trauma may be so swift and complete that they are not aware of the flashback. Now, in my complex PTSD, that's where I was. I was stuck in that everything I disassociate. I disassociate so fast and then really have no idea of anything that went on. And my disassociation always happened in places that I really did not need it to be happening. Now, that disassociation as a child protected me. It protected me. It protected the idea of me, my mind. I would have broken had I not had this disassociation ability. So it saved me at one point in my time. It served a purpose. However, as I'm healing, it does not serve a purpose anymore. It doesn't serve a purpose to have that somatic flashback or the emotional one that would come with it. Because, there's no conscious awareness of the memory happening. It's happening. But then my emotions also flood up. And now it's like I'm right back in the situation, like it's happening to me all over again. And it wasn't ever a fun, comfortable feeling for me. There is also the disassociation, anxiety, and depression. And then on the other side with CPTSD, associated with dissociative disorders and personality disorders. That's when your anxiety and depression have become so bad, it's become a personality disorder. For me, in my example, my personal example, I developed borderline personality disorder. And borderline personality disorder is where you do not, there's an emotion that you don't want to that you don't want to face. So you do everything in your power to gloss over that emotion with another emotion so you don't have to face the emotion that's actually happening. And for me, that emotion was anger. And that was growing up in a house where there was a lot of anger, that when people get angry and start getting aggressive, that was a disassociation moment for me. I would start to disassociate if I was not conscious and aware of what my body was doing naturally, because it becomes such a second nature thing to do. In my marriage, this disassociation took its toll because I would disassociate, but my husband at the time, I don't think he realized that I disassociated. He probably just assumed that was just the way I was. And, it was at that time, but I couldn't grow out of it because that disassociated manner was what he was used to. And when I started reassociating the emotions back into the places they're supposed to be, then all of a sudden stuff was coming out that it really wasn't a whole lot. It wasn't very fair to him because this was all stuff that I built up and he had no consciousness of himself. I always said I was fine. So it played a big part in why I know my marriage fell apart. And then difficulty regulating emotions. And then, of course, the corresponding appropriate emotional responses to triggers as they happen. Now, over the top emotional responses was kind of what sent me to therapy in the first place, because I noticed that my emotional responses with my children sometimes a little over the top and disproportionate for what was going on. There was no reason to lose my head over dishes being in the sink. There was no reason for me to lose my head over the garbage piled up and not taken out. These are all things that if I lived alone, I would do myself anyway. Having kids there to do those things, yes, it helps teach them senses of responsibility. However, it is not that big a deal for me to do those things as well. I learned different ways of handling how to get the kids motivated to do chores, but also knowing that eventually I'm going to come to a place where my children are not going to live with me, and all of these things I'm going to be doing on my own anyway. So what's the big deal if I do them anyway? Yes, it's important to teach responsibility. It was also more equally important to my mental health that that small stress go away, because I didn't have time for it. I didn't have the necessary energy it took to put into that battle. So I had to learn to choose my battles wisely, learn new methods of motivation for my children, a new, different way to come across so that it's not always punishment, but more of consequences. And that helped out my mental health when I was in that segment of life. Now I'm in a different place of life where I don't have those minor stresses. Now it is all up to me to do those things in my life. If I want clean dishes, I've got to do them. If I dirty them, I've got to clean them. There isn't a magical, happy fairy maid that come and visits me and cleans my house. It's going to have to be me. So every so often, I'm going to have to put on that little magical house cleaning fairy hat and clean it up. Now what I really work on is the regulation of my self-talk and what it is that I tell myself about my environment. Say if I don't do the dishes one night, I wake up in the morning and I don't feel like doing dishes, but I got a sink full and I can't make breakfast until I do them. Or maybe I skip 2 or 3 days and don't do the dishes, and now they're really piled up. I might actually have to use the dishwasher. I've stopped the berating self-talk. Do I need to be productive every day in order to have self-worth? No, no. I am worthy every day without having to be productive. My productivity is not a measurement of my self-worth, and it shouldn't be of yours either. All of those symptoms of PTSD or complex PTSD, whether you have the one or the other, it can lead to such a negative view. And a negative view of yourself is only going to hurt you, because eventually that negative view of yourself spills out onto the people that you love around you, and that is the last thing you want. That was one of the main reasons I went into therapy, was because that's what was happening. Was my negativity and my worthlessness and my helplessness was spilling off onto my kids. And I knew I needed help in order to stop that from happening, because I couldn't figure it out on my own. I realize now that it was a product of my environment, that a lot of the ideas and views and beliefs I hold were due to the environment that I lived in and what was surrounding me. And now I have a choice to take on new ideas and views of the world. And I don't have to be so belief driven that I cannot believe somebody else's experience and I must force my experience upon them, or that I take their experience as bigger than mine and that my experience has no place. All of our experience has a place, and all of our experience leads us to who we are. Our choices build our character. I know that helpless place, that worthless place, that low, low place, the place where everything is falling apart and nothing is going right. And if you're in that place, I'm going to add right now, if you're in that place and you have nobody to talk to in your life, or you just don't know who to turn to, the phone number to the National Crisis Hotline is 988. 988 will connect you to people that can maybe ask you the right questions you need in order to move yourself forward in whatever crisis you're going through. So if you're struggling, I encourage you, please reach out and get some help. As always, take what resonates and leave the rest. And until next time, light and love, friends.